All right, so we're gonna go over the latest chapter of Dragon Ball Super, dissect it, and give some predictions about what's gonna happen in the next chapter. So we'll start off with this page now. So what do you guys think about Granola's comments about his attacks aren't invigorating Vegeta anymore? What do you think that means?
So where we left off last chapter, Vegeta sustained a lot of damage because his Hakai Blast was detonated in close proximity to him, thanks to Granola's newly awakened second eye. So Vegeta has now suffered a lot of damage, and so he is sort of on the defensive. And so when Granola starts firing his, long range Ki Blast, the reason they're no longer invigorating him, in my opinion, is that Vegeta is slowly losing the mindset of the destroyer that is the principle for which Ultra Ego is meant to be for. And so because of Granola's increase in power, which we don't know if it's from the second eye, it could just be Granola is just further tapping into the wish granted power that he obtained. The point is, Granola is displaying more power than he did in chapter 74 or 75, and so Vegeta is he's reached his peak at this current moment.
It's funny that you mentioned that regarding Vegeta's power, because it actually adds another similarity that this form has to UI, because Vegeta over time, as he's in this form, is he's losing that control just the exact same way as when it comes to Ultra Instinct, it gains more vital points, which I think could be based off of Goku's mentality when he's in the form, but it could also just be for just like it's just a weakness that the Ultra Instinct form genuinely has.
Also, if you remember in the anime, Goku also had the whole heat thing going on. So, like, yeah, it's just establishing a weakness within the form. But I think it's a bit more nuanced as far as, like, what's going on between Granola and Vegeta here. I do think that the damage is causing Vegeta to have to be concerned with his well-being. I do think there's some truth to that. But I also think the more, the better that Granola does against Vegeta, the harder time he has maintaining the mindset. Because this is also a battle of the idea of whether or not the Saiyans were meant to die or not. So anytime Vegeta starts to struggle, it's almost like that idea starts to dominate the battle, if that makes any sense. And so, like, the better Granola does, the worse he's going to be able to maintain the mindset. And as far as Granola's power up or like his double eye thing, I actually think it's not necessarily that he got like a lot stronger. I think it's basically a Ki Blast equivalent to vital points. I think he's just so ridiculously accurate that I think he's like concentrating his energy in such a way that he's just doing more damage. I think it's more so about accuracy and concentration and things of that nature than it is him getting a giant ki boost. Because if you remember, like when he destroyed Vegeta's blast, he like used 2 concentrated blasts to destroy it, and it's like he hit the vital point of the blast itself. So I think that is a big factor in why his moves are so effective against Vegeta, because it's a concentrated form of energy that's also being shot at him extremely accurately.
Yeah, that's just what it is about the eye ability. He just gains a lot more precision with it. It's just like how he is he had it initially with the first eye. It's just adding a lot more. That's why we had the cliffhanger at the end of the last chapter, which is how he was able to shoot through Vegeta's Ki Blast in such a way where it blew up in him, and hence the reason why Granola was able to get the upper hand over here on Vegeta. It's not. Yeah. I don't think it's necessarily a strength thing, but it's more all of his attacks are just that much more accurate to where it does more damage like that.
Yeah, it's kind of like how Goku, even though he was tanking Granola's blasts in Super Saiyan Blue, if he didn't develop the ability to move his vitals, he still would have got wrecked. So it's just like Granola, like Super Saiyan Blue may not be, people may not see it as strong as Ultra Instinct, but just factoring in that Super Saiyan Blue Goku prevented Granola from being able to attack his vitals shows what a difference being able to attack your vitals is compared to not being able to attack them.
I also think there's a little doubt. I also think there's doubt that's starting to permeate through Vegeta's mind, because once he saw Granola overcome him last chapter, by focusing with pinpoint accuracy thanks to his 2 eyes to destroy his Hakai Blast, and Vegeta was puzzled, asking what would happen or what had happened. I think that's one of the initial points where Vegeta started to doubt himself. And if you doubt yourself using a god technique or a technique that employs a particular kind of mindset, that will affect the effectiveness and the power that that form is supposed to represent and possess.
Exactly.
So I think we're starting to see that.
Exactly, and this page is actually evidence of that, because Granola's talking about right here about he's not an ultra ego anymore, and he says specifically that the universe is proving him right, and that fate has clearly decided that the Saiyans are doomed to die. So like Granola is playing on the fact that that is Vegeta's weakness at the time, is the fact that he's experiencing doubt, which is why I said before, Vegeta has, like, even though he achieved Ultra Ego, he has never actually fully completed Beerus's lessons, which is the reason that he used, becoming battle crazed as a exploit to go into his destroyer form, because that was the only means he had of focusing on nothing but destruction, due to the fact that he was still guilty. He never conquered that, even though, like, Beerus told him that that was the key. He never actually conquered it. He just thought, well, the only way I can conquer that is just to use something that will basically drive my instincts to allow me to focus on nothing but destruction. So, like, and that's the reason that he says, Beerus taught him that a power based on instinct is unbounded, is because he's using his personal instincts to tap into destruction. He's using, his nature as a Saiyan specifically to tap into that power. So yeah, there's a lot of evidence here that Vegeta is experiencing the doubt that you mentioned. You have any thoughts on that, Starblast?
Oh yeah, so specifically on the part where Granola says that fate is clearly deciding that the Saiyans are doomed to die, I think that very concept, because we've talked about this in a bunch of, we talked about this in the video that you and I did a little bit ago, where it was all just a play on whether or not the Saiyans were actually fated to die from a couple of chapters ago, and it's really funny that we had that discussion, because right now the literally the title of this month's chapter was titled The Fate of the Saiyans, and this entire thing is just Vegeta more so battling Granola on the grounds of whether or not these Saiyans were actually a race fated to die, which Vegeta himself did believe until he had that conversation with Beerus. And it's why it makes Granola over here, like we were talking about last video, just like Vegeta's Jiren, because it's a battle of that very ideology.
Yeah, and I also think that Vegeta losing his resolve here is very reminiscent of whenever Jiren lost his resolve in the Tournament of Power. And
yeah, it's like what Granola is saying is seeping into Vegeta's head, because he has that same exact belief. Maybe fate is destined. Maybe fate does have that idea for us that we all should be dying. That we've done all of these horrible different things, and we deserve anything that comes to us.
Right. All right. So let's move on to the next page. So here Vegeta says, I am the master of my own fate. So he hasn't completely given up here. He's still struggling to maintain the idea that, he is the master of his own fate, like Beerus taught him. So he hasn't completely given up yet. What do you guys think really is his breaking point? Like, what do you think happens in the chapter that causes him to give up?
For me, in my opinion, Vegeta's breaking point, and this occurs a little bit later in the chapter, is as this whole fight, between Granola and Vegeta, that started in chapter 74, Vegeta, for the most part, was not fighting to kill Granola. He was fighting in a manner of which, similar to Kabe, he was trying to teach him a lot of lessons. And this goes back to chapter 75, where he was trying to use, quote unquote, tough love on Granola when he obtained the upper hand thanks to Ultra Ego. Vegeta would always give inquiries into Granola and his state of mind. He would ask Granola, he would give Granola nuggets of wisdoms and facts concerning the fate of the Saiyans, what had happened to them, the destruction of planet Vegeta. And Oatmeal, when Oatmeal was a part of Granola in this fight, Oatmeal would also, rebound off of what Vegeta would say and ask Granola to reconsider and to look at, the facts, which is that these Saiyans don't appear to be the same barbaric Saiyans that invaded his planet 40-odd years ago. And for the most part, Vegeta has just mainly been trying to get Granola to realize that he's in the wrong. He doesn't realize that the two Saiyans he's facing are not the same people that destroyed and ruined his life. This is a character, Granola, that I'm referring to, is just plagued by guilt. He's plagued by trauma, uh, because of what happened to him, and he doesn't even know the full story. It's obvious to us, the readers, that there's missing pieces, and what Granola knows to be true. Oatmeal is also missing pieces, and the Saiyans are slowly realizing the facts and how they were set up by the Heaters. Um, as far as Vegeta's breaking point, I think it's when Granola decides to give his final resolve later in the chapter. To in a way kamikaze himself and Vegeta, and with also seeing how the performance of Goku in his Super Saiyan Blue or Super Saiyan Blue plus UI, seeing all of that just made him realize that he may have been wrong, that he wasn't a good enough candidate not only to inherit the God of Destruction's mindset, but he also just wasn't a good enough teacher to Granola to make him realize that his ways are just going to lead to the same pity and self-doubt that now Vegeta has.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that, but I also think that it was just the fact that Granola was beating Vegeta. I think, like, symbolically, Vegeta is looking at this as, if I can't dominate Granola, then it's not my destiny or the Saiyan's destiny to succeed. So I think that's a big part of it. It's just like the battle itself is a motivation for Vegeta to keep going and keep trying to master this mindset. So
I think I think it's also just a play on the want to prove that he has a completely different fate and not succumb to the one that Granola is saying that is fated for him and the rest of the Saiyans. He's trying to battle and fight off against that very fate, which is why he got upset when Goku got in the way, because it's his personal battle, it's his thing against fate. When in fact, one of the things that Vegeta probably didn't even realize is that Goku actually is acting in accordance with fate just to save him in that moment, because fate has other things in store for Vegeta in the future.
yeah, the thing about it is like with Vegeta, it's like he himself is a representation of the entire Saiyan race in his mind. So if he can't pull off becoming strong enough to save himself, then none of the Saiyans are worth anything. And that's the reason that he gets upset whenever Goku interferes, because teamwork isn't a fair fight. Vegeta has talked about before about how all he wants is a fair fight, and the reason he's like that is because that's a true test of your mettle. That's a true test of who you are. And so Vegeta, it still plays into everything we've been talking about so far. It's just like, not only does he have to beat Granola, he has to do it on his own, and he has to do it with his own power, and he has to prove to himself that as a Saiyan, because he holds himself as an example of the entire Saiyan race, that if he can succeed, that it's not the fate of the Saiyans to be killed because he succeeded. So yeah, that's definitely why Vegeta got so upset that Goku jumped in. But I also think, so right here where he's talking about there's nobody he'd rather beat the hell and back out of than Goku, and talking about how basically anything's better than teaming up with him. I think he's saying that because Goku is basically, like, he knows that the only reason that Goku is fighting is to get stronger. He knows that Goku isn't trying to actually prove anything. So he knows that this is just like Goku working on himself, and that Goku doesn't actually have any skin in the game when it comes to proving anything to Granola or proving anything about the Saiyans. This is just all a means of Goku proving himself, and that's the reason that he's so upset with Goku right here. It's just like he's a third party that basically Vegeta is like having a gap in judgment, because he's realizing that unlike Granola and Vegeta, Goku isn't actually trying to prove anything in this fight. So he's
To add on to what you were saying earlier with Vegeta's like holding up the entire Saiyan race on his shoulders, I think one of the reasons why he does that is just simply because of his hierarchy. He was the prince before they all died, and so he feels that sense of responsibility to prove that everything regarding the Saiyan race weighs on top of his shoulders.
Right. And you notice like Goku is giving Vegeta hell for like endangering his own life here, and I think that's also due to, and like what Vegeta is talking about, and Vegeta's talking about how that's better than teaming up with him. He's saying that because Goku is kind of a representation of weakness in a lot of ways to Vegeta. Even though he's admitted that Goku is number one in the past, one thing that he's always looked down on Goku for, even after his little speech, was Goku relying on other people's help. Like to him, like that's always been like a sort of a weak trait. The only way Vegeta will like do that is if people he genuinely loves and cares about are in danger. So like in this particular case, that factor is gone from this fight. Goku's normal excuse for jumping in the fight and using teamwork is no longer present in this situation. So this is a very different situation than most of the other situations where Vegeta was okay with teamwork and okay with working together, because they aren't trying to protect anyone here. They're both just trying to grow and become more powerful. So, Vegeta can't relate to Goku in this situation when it comes to them working together to take down Granola.
Something I just noticed over here when it comes to the panel, if you look at on the very left side, Goku later in the chapter talks about how Granola, like there's this slight pause between where Granola attacks and where he locks onto that point. I think Goku in this chapter, when he sees Granola attacking, he actually notices that very pause, and you can actually see with the panels, like with the two photos right there, it's almost like that very thing is being visualized before it's even explained to the reader later on by Goku.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, he's noticing it. And it's pretty cool too. That's a good catch. Yep. So here he is talking about how he's got to read on the vitals thing. Let's talk about that. So I've already talked about how hitting his vitals and not hitting his vitals is actually the deciding factor in whether or not he takes down Goku in Super Saiyan Blue. So what are your all's thoughts on that? Do you agree?
I think that is the case for how Granola's character functions. We don't know like the inner workings of what Toyotaru and Toriyama, when crafting Granola's character. We don't know what other ideas they were brainstorming when they were creating Granola's power scheme and the way he fights. Obviously, he's a sniper / bounty hunter kind of character, similar to Hit. He uses a particular kind of fighting that's different from the Earthling martial arts or the other martial arts that we've seen so far in Dragon Ball. Granola's like, it's almost like a keto. Like, he uses just pinpoint crit hits to overwhelm opponents regardless of whether they may be stronger or not, because like he said in chapter 72, I believe, no matter how skilled of a martial artist you are, no one can hide their vitals. That's how Granola's whole character is, a guy who waits for an opportunity and then, in a way, almost one-shots, knocks them out of their form, etc., etc. And one of my criticisms this arc, or with this chapter, is that it's hard to tell if Goku is utilizing Super Saiyan Blue plus UI or if it's just Super Saiyan Blue perfected. One of the features of Super Saiyan Blue plus UI is that you instinctively dodge and your body will harden to take blows that you that would normally maybe knock out Goku if he was in another form. Usually when Toyotaru draws Goku utilizing what we know now as the Super Saiyan Blue plus UI or just base UI, he has Goku close his eyes or literally say to the character he's facing that he's using UI. So that's just one of my small criticisms. But once Goku figures out this window of opportunity between the interval in which Granola attacks and then targets the vital, it almost seems like that insurmountable power that Granola has, thanks to the wish, is not so big, right? Because just from a power feat alone, this Super Saiyan Blue perfected Goku or Super Saiyan Blue plus UI is able to contend with Granola.
Well, Monaito there is an exposition piece where Monaito did say he was the strongest today, but he didn't know who was going to be the strongest tomorrow. So it's already hinted at that Granola may be surpassed, because
it could actually be both. I'm sorry.
Because Monaito wouldn't say that if it wasn't going to be a problem for Granola in the future. But as far as like Super Saiyan Blue Goku using Ultra Instinct, I think I can probably fix that for you. Because what I think it is I don't think he is using Ultra Instinct. I think that Super Saiyan Blue Goku has just figured out how to move his vitals. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't fit into the narrative that he's doing it to perfect his use of Ultra Instinct. Because the thing about it is since Goku has figured out how to do this in Super Saiyan Blue, it'll be easier for his body when he uses Ultra Instinct to utilize that technique or that move or what he's doing without him having to, it basically just like it eases his body into being able to do that, to where whenever Goku does that in the future, it's not going to like have so much of a stamina drain. Because whenever Whis was talking about Goku using Ultra Instinct in base, the reason he gave for it, he actually made reference to the transformation itself whenever he talked about the benefits of using Ultra Instinct and Base, because he said that it would help hinder the time limit. He said that using Ultra Instinct and Base and perfecting being able to use it outside of the transformation itself would eventually, help extend the time limit of Ultra Instinct. So I think that this is just Goku working on Ultra Instinct without actually using it, in a sense, just like how he's like learning from Granola's moves and observing him. And it's just like everything you got to remember that, like, everything before Ultra Instinct, everything Goku did before Ultra Instinct is the reason that he can use Ultra Instinct. All of everything that he's imprinted into his muscle memory, all of his experiences, and everything he's been through is the reason that he can use Ultra Instinct to the degree that he has. So him being able to use this ability at will in Super Saiyan Blue can also benefit him when he uses the Ultra Instinct transformation, regardless of whether or not he's using Ultra Instinct here.
There's a couple of possibilities that I think it could be. So one possibility is that it could actually be both of them, like full power Super Saiyan Blue plus the Ultra Instinct thing, which he's already made a habit of doing. But at the same time, there's just like what you said, Jordan. There's no prior. Everything that Goku has done with his Ultra Instinct is as a result of all the experience he's had. But I don't think Goku has really had, and at any point throughout the series, has he really shown the ability to shift his vital points in the way that it's being shown up over here. Maybe only in the original Dragon Ball, if there was something that I missed over there. But like throughout everything else, like it's never happened before. So
he's never been able to do it. But that could just be the result of him learning from Ultra Instinct itself.
It could very well be. But if it was like him learning from Ultra Instinct, I don't see how he would be able to implement that into Ultra Instinct. He at least not yet.
Well, Ultra Instinct implements it into itself automatically. He didn't actually even have to try. Whenever he was fighting Moro and his body did it, he didn't do it on purpose. It just happened. And so I think this is more so just breaking his body into being able to use it better. I don't think it's necessarily like, I think so. Like, if Goku can get used to do this, get used to doing this all the time, then whenever he does use Ultra Instinct later on in the future, he won't have the same issue that he had with Granola before, where Granola can pinpoint his vitals and then take him out and knock him away, because he'll be used to at will using that ability, and his body will just be more used to being able to activate it. It's a very new thing for Goku, and that's the reason that we've only ever seen him use it in Ultra Instinct before, because it's not something that he is used to using. But now that he's getting used to using it, it will probably have less of a drain on him when he uses it in Ultra Instinct. But alright, so we see here he tries to hit Goku's vitals again. Now, look, this is really interesting to me, because like it almost looks like Goku does a very similar attack to Granola whenever he attacks him back, and that kind of goes back to what I was talking about in my previous video. I do think that Granola is also going to help improve Goku offensively. I think this whole like him being able to pinpoint vitals and stuff like that, I really do think that Goku is going to learn from that. What do you guys think of that?
I agree. In every fight throughout most of Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Super, Goku has taken away from the fight a valuable lesson, whether a lesson on the mindset of a martial artist or just techniques in general. The characters that Goku faces, Goku not only has an effect on them by changing them, but they also have an effect on him by giving him the necessary means to further improve himself in his never-ending quest for ultimate power. And so Granola, because he's a character that specializes in long-range fighting and attacking vitals, well, that sounds a lot like how Ultra Instinct has been displayed both in the anime and in the manga. When Goku counteracts against an opponent when he's in Ultra Instinct, the first thing he does is he attacks with overwhelming force, but usually that overwhelming force is just a punch or a kick or some kind of ki blast that's at such an effective range that it's almost like a crit. It's almost like a critical hit, just like how Granola fights. And the thing is Goku, those movements are probably very taxing in terms of the energy necessary to do them, and so they probably also play a role in causing a stamina drain in both just base UI and also the Silver Hair Complete UI. So I do agree with you, Jordan. I think he might have actually done the same thing that Granola just did to him. He launched a vital attack on Granola, because you even see a surprised look. It looks like the same hit that Granola gave Super Saiyan God Goku in Chapter 72.
Yeah.
So I think you're onto something.
It's possible, but if Goku was honestly doing the exact same move that Granola was doing, you would think that like his hand posture would be the exact same way, whereas he'd be hitting that vital point, and then Granola would get launched back afterwards. If that was really intended, I feel like maybe Toyotaru would draw it in with Goku being that way. But there is that possibility. It could be wrong.
I think he is going to learn from it. I don't know if he's doing it right there, but I mainly just wanted to get your thoughts on whether or not you think in the future he will be learning from Granola. But I gotta say, before we move on to the next page, I really like how Granola is drawn in these few pages right here. Like especially that
Toyotaro always draws Granola, his facial expressions with Granola, and just the way Granola's muscles are drawn when he extends his hand or when he does a vital attack. It's like a lot of people criticize Toyotaru for his body proportion and the way he draws necks and arms, but this chapter I don't think it had any problems like that.
No, and Granola is just drawn super well. Like I love like the faces he makes. Like he's got a lot of personality, and you can tell that like Toyotaro is trying to draw him as a separate character to Goku and Vegeta. But okay, so Goku says, I can't dodge the attack completely, but at least I can shift enough to make sure you don't hit where it really hurts. So yeah, you're right. That does make it seem like he's just shifting his vitals rather than hardening his body, which is really weird to think about. Let's see. You don't say. You've actually thought this through. I suppose your invasion technique makes that possible. Still, your strategy is pure defense. Without attacks of your own, you'll never manage to surpass me. You're not wrong. That could be a problem. So that kind of hints at what I was talking about a while ago, don't you think?
Which thing? We talked about a lot of stuff.
About Goku using Granola to work on his offensive capabilities.
Oh, then yeah, for sure. Like the Z fighters, whenever they're fighting, they just learn from like every single fight, and they improved on that. I think, even with Vegeta earlier, he was more so taking the fight as not as an opportunity to kill Granola, but also to teach him a lesson. It wouldn't be surprised me at all if Goku's using this more so as learning experience for him to, to get stronger as a fighter, because that's usually what Goku's aim is in every fight he's been in.
Yeah, and very much the opposite to Vegeta in this fight, because Vegeta is definitely trying to prove something in this fight. So, okay, so Goku comments on how his body won't last much longer. Vegeta talks about how he's tagging in. Goku talks about how he's obsessed with doing this alone. And Vegeta blatantly says, yeah, think of it as Super Saiyan pride if you want. And Goku ponders at whether or not Vegeta can really beat him. And Granola looks zapped right there. Like, that last panel right there, he looks like out of breath and just like destroyed.
One thing that I've been noticing amongst the community is that everyone was saying that Vegeta was regressing and that he was completely out of character. Where, okay, so he was kind of regressing because that's how he felt that he could actually tap into the ultra ego power. But it's more so of like, where he says it's like, think of it as stubborn Saiyan pride if you want. He's not directly saying that it is Saiyan pride. I think it's just still going to that very thing from before where he wants to battle his own fate. He wants to be the one to take upon that responsibility and face Granola. So it's not really, I don't see it as like,
yeah, you're right,
being stubborn Saiyan pride.
You're right, because here's the thing. But Beerus specifically said that Vegeta takes all the sins of the Saiyans onto himself. So he is treating himself as a representation of whether or not the Saiyans deserve what they're getting. Like he's taking all of their sins onto himself. He is the last example of the same Saiyans that supposedly caused the fate that they suffered. Like he's the last example of that. So like if Goku wins, that doesn't prove anything. Like it's Vegeta specifically that has to win, because Vegeta specifically is the one who has all of that on his conscience. Goku doesn't have that on his conscience.
And it's funny too, because it's just like, the ironic thing is that Vegeta becomes even more of that type of Saiyan when he turns into Ultra Ego. It's like he resembles that very type of Saiyan that destroyed Granola's planet. So he's becoming an actual representation to Granola of the evil ravaged Saiyans that he's despised so long.
Yeah, but there's a reason for that, and it's because, Beerus talked about how it was nonsense that it was their destiny to begin with, and the reason he said that was because it wasn't fate that destroyed the Saiyans, it was Beerus. So Beerus is fate. Beerus is the negative karma that the Saiyans experienced. He is the punishment. He is the divine intervention. He is their fate. So it's just like Vegeta trying to become a destroyer, in a sense, is him trying to become the very essence of what punished the Saiyans to begin with.
I also agree that I don't think it's character regression. I think it's a lot of just surface level kind of misunderstanding within the Dragon Ball community and social media. Vegeta, like in the same page, reveals his plan. He tells Kakarot that he knows Granola's at his peak. He's running out of juice. You can visibly see that on Granola's character. This battle has just been a long, an intense battle. Nonstop. Granola has had no real break. Goku and Vegeta have kind of tagged in and out. But for the most part, Granola has not had any moment to rest. And any fighter will reach their max after extensive physical exertion. And so Vegeta knows that. So when people keep saying that Vegeta's acting one-dimensional, he's acting like his old DBZ counterpart. No, Vegeta is well aware of the stakes here. He's well aware of where he's at, where he stands in comparison to Granola. And like you said, Jordan, this is a fight that it's between Granola and him, because Vegeta is the embodiment of those old Saiyans. He's the embodiment of those same Saiyans that invaded and did all these horrible and barbaric things to Granola and his people. So like you said, and like Beerus has said, back in chapter 60 and 69, I believe, Vegeta is a guy that has been shouldering this burden. This has been the chip on his shoulder for so long, and this is his fight. Kakarot is a Saiyan who he wasn't even on planet Vegeta. He wasn't indoctrinated into this Saiyan culture. He was sent away by Saiyans who were, a little different from the other Saiyan class, and Goku has no real understanding of the pride and the royalty that Vegeta and King Vegeta and all these other Saiyans have had. So this fight it's a very deep fight between Granola and Vegeta.
Yeah, and right here, this panel where Vegeta is calling Granola's reserve into question, talking about how Granola talks about how his mind works in mysterious ways, and then Vegeta's like, look, you are so hell-bent on revenge that you're not thinking clearly. And he basically says like he thinks that he survived all this time just to take revenge on them. And that's basically a mirroring of what Beerus told Vegeta, is that it's very similar to the whole sin conversation that they had, because it's almost like Vegeta's saying, if you can't let go of the past, then you're having the same issues that I've had. He's just pointing out, you are having the exact same problems I had, and you're going through something that you are destroying yourself as a result of focusing on the past. And it's a reflection of the same lesson that Beerus taught Vegeta in like every way, because as we see here in just a few minutes, and I do think it's ironic that he says this and that it's a reflection of that lesson, and then in the very next panel, that's when he goes ultra ego, because he's still trying to not only teach himself that lesson, but he's also mirroring that lesson to Granola. And I think that's the reason that dialogue took place right before he transformed again.
You don't see Vegeta ever begging to fight someone alone, like ever asking please to Goku in order to fight someone alone. That's just how you know that this is one of those deep fights. Again, like what we've been talking about throughout this entire video.
Yeah, and I also think that him saying that, look, so Granola's talking about how he hit his limit, right? And then Vegeta's talking about how this power is unbounded and has no limits. I think that is also exposition, because I don't think Vegeta's done. I think Vegeta's going to tap into Ultra Ego again, like, very soon. Okay, so this is something I wanted to talk to you about, JD. So you were talking about in your video about how you thought this was kind of like contradictory to what Vegeta was trying to teach Granola, and that's actually correct in some ways, but in other ways, this is also like Vegeta letting go of his past temporarily and giving Granola shit for not doing it. So Granola is destroying everything around him because he refuses to let go of the past. So this isn't necessarily Vegeta not teaching Granola a lesson. It's actually quite the contrary, because the reason that Vegeta was so willing to jump into this town regardless of whether or not there would be people here or not is because he was in Ultra Ego, and he was still attempting to take on the mindset that Beerus taught him. So he wasn't thinking about protecting anything at this point because he was in the Ultra Ego state. And he was using that mindset in this situation to point out to Granola that, focusing your mind on a mindset like that, where you're just wanting to destroy your target, has repercussions. That was the entire point of this exchange. It's just I'm going to go into the city and damage it to show you that, like, yes, I learned this power from a god of destruction, and this is the price. Like, I have to think about nothing but destruction, and you're doing the same thing by thinking about nothing but revenge. So it's very hypocritical of Granola to give Vegeta shit for doing what he's doing here, whenever Granola is doing the same thing because he's hell bent on revenge.
Yeah. Initially, when I read the chapter, that was just my first kind of, knee-jerk kind of reaction, where I compared the past dialogue from chapter 74, where, Vegeta gives this happy speech where he's like, "Oh, I'm in my happy place, nothing on this planet to protect, no family, no distractions," right? And then that's one of the initial triggers to go into Ultra Ego.
Yeah.
And I thought that had contradicted with the whole incident in this chapter where he kicks Granola into the Shigerian city, of which there's two, and you could assume Granola knew that maybe the Shigerians had evacuated, or they were in the process of it. But I think Granola still had enough of a level head to where he even asked Vegeta, he's like, "Hey, let's change location," and then Vegeta in his Ultra Ego, his primal state, just says, like, "Oh, I guess you really do have something you care about." But like you said, they're both mirroring this hypocrisy there, because they're being in this state of 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 revenge, and which is what the theme of this arc is. All it does is it causes ruin upon themselves and the outside environment. And like you said, Granola, because of his excessive revenge, I mean, he's firing blast at Vegeta right in his Ultra Ego state, but he's also destroying the surrounding environment just like Vegeta was.
Yeah.
He's a hypocrite as well.
Yeah, exactly. So here we are. We see this panel of Bardock and his crew, and Granola, walking up to his mother. Now, it's right here that the other Cerealians helped Granola get away. So it really seems like Manito hasn't even interacted with them at this point.
I initially thought that, and it's sort of like an early impression. I think Granola's mom, if say like Bardock did indeed save Granola's mom and Granola, and then they somehow survive later on, maybe not to the present day like where we're at right now, but as far as what happened, Granola's mom, assuming that's the case, we do know from chapter 71, I believe, Gas has bad memories from about 40 years ago, and Alec comforts him and says that whatever happened back then, it won't happen now. So what if like Gas back then, maybe he wasn't as strong as he was, but maybe because we know the heaters actively played a role in the Cerealian extinction, what if maybe Gas got into a conflict with Granola's mom because she was one of the few surviving members, and maybe Gas is the one that killed Granola's mom? That would add a lot of tension and a super heated rivalry among Granola and Gas, assuming Gas gets the wish going forward.
It's very possible, but the only issue I have with that is that like it seems like however she had to die, it has to be pinned on the Saiyans. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. At the end of the day, I mean, you see other Saiyan Grade 8s, which you could also presume that they're Bardock's squad, because we know Toyotaro has drawn Bardock's squad in the new Dragon Ball Minus continuity. So we could assume that, and maybe they don't share the same kind of compassion that this Bardock might be experiencing.
Oh, I guarantee they don't. That's a very good point.
Yeah. So even though I think it was what was the guy's name, Toa, the guy that gave OG Bardock his bandana, that same Toa, I think is that how you pronounce it, Toa?
I think it's Toma.
His name?
Toma.
Toma in this continuity could still be like, he could be an average, barbaric kind of Saiyan who doesn't have compassion for other tribes. So it's very possible those other apes that you see in that picture above in the right hand corner, it's very possible that those Saiyan apes, may have continued the extinction of the Cerealians, which is why Granola still has deep-seated hatred of them.
They could be any asshole Saiyans, to be honest with you. Bardock could just be matched up with anybody. But alright, so Vegeta talks about here about how any grudge against the Saiyans is well deserved, further confirming that he's still guilty and that he still hasn't given up on the idea that the Saiyans were meant to, what's really interesting about this is like it's almost like Granola and Vegeta are both constantly going back and forth on what they believe. So like it's a constant struggle between both characters to keep their resolve. And it's just like every once in a while Vegeta will crack and he'll be like, yeah, I guess, it really was the destiny of the Saiyans to kill to be killed. And then other times he's like, no, it's it's up to me. I make my own destiny. It's like as the battle progresses, it's like their mind is constantly being changed back and forth into like depending on how the battle is going. Like, because like right here, it's almost like Vegeta is slowly coming to the right conclusion, because if you see right here, he talks about how, by eradicating the Saiyans, he's just repeating history, and it's almost like he's starting to realize that Granola is deserving of the destruction that he's experiencing. So that's kind of like reinforcing the idea in Vegeta's mind that fate exists, and that not only is Vegeta a victim of it, but Granola is a victim of it too.
Yeah, and I mean, you can see that, like, that what you're saying, you can visually see on Granola and Vegeta. Granola is so battle damaged, so heated from this long exchange between him, Kakarot, and Vegeta, and then Vegeta, I mean, his body's all mangled up. He's holding his left hand, the classic Vegeta holding his hand. Yeah, the meme. But the thing is Vegeta, like, and this is something that again furthers the idea that this is not character regression. This is character progression. Vegeta is so conflicted that he's actually almost in a state of like, I don't care what happens. I guess this is fate. I guess Granola's answer is the right answer. It's the fate of the Saiyans to be destroyed. So be it.
Yeah.
And it's like this. We've never seen Vegeta like this. I mean, usually when Vegeta makes some kind of self-sacrifice, like when he was Majin Vegeta against Fat Boo, or when he was fighting Topo and he was willing to give his life, for his family, which is the same theme, right? Family and friends, and even Kakarot. Here, it's like there is no sense of self-sacrifice. Like,
yeah, it's because Granola is designed to give Vegeta doubt. That's what it is. It's Granola's character is designed to specifically give Vegeta doubt in himself and his way of doing things, which is why he's an obstacle specifically designed to prevent Vegeta from being able to master Beerus's lesson right away.
There's Vegeta over here. I think it's to add on to the why this is character progression. I think it's just Vegeta has more dimensions in the way that he's written here in this chapter than he is in a lot of the other ones before. But in the past, you would see Vegeta. He's just like, I don't care. I'm gonna do what I'm here to do. I'm gonna take you down. Like, this is my pride. This is my goal, and I'm gonna do whatever I can to accomplish my goal. I don't care what you have to say. It's that stubbornness that he would stick with, which a lot of people like. People are saying that Vegeta is being ruined by this very thing because he doesn't have that same one-dimensional personality as he not that he was completely one-dimensional, but he's not being the exact same Vegeta as he used to be anymore. But it's just like the way that he's written here, he has so much more layers to the character, and I think that this is actually a writing improvement to Vegeta's overall character, and it's going to heavily impact how a lot of how he's going to be from this moving on from this part of the series.
Yeah, and I want to acknowledge what he says here about how he couldn't revert back to the callous man and unfeeling man he was. A lot of people are taking that statement as Vegeta is never going to try and do that again, and I beg to differ. Like, if anything, that statement should tell you that he is going to try to do it again, and next time he's going to succeed. Because he's saying that he couldn't revert back to that person, and that makes him a novice, which means he couldn't complete Beerus's lesson. Which means if he's going to complete Beerus's lesson at all, he is going to become that man. So
go on.
So like, and that in itself isn't character regression either, and I'll tell you why. Because even if Vegeta becomes that man through focusing on that mindset, he is not inherently that man. It's just him using a transformation to become that man, which means it's not Vegeta's base character, it's Vegeta tapping into a mindset to become that type of character. So even in the classic sense of character regression, it's not character regression, even if he does take on his own self in the Ultra Ego transformation, because it's temporary. It's just something that he has to do in order to tap into his power. That doesn't mean that Vegeta outside of Ultra Ego still hasn't experienced everything he's experienced, and that he still doesn't care about his family, and that he still hasn't learned things. It just means that Vegeta, once he's completely free of guilt, can tap into a mindset that can allow him to have just as much power as Goku he just has to be very careful about how he uses it, and the application of it. It doesn't even character progression would imply that he's going to permanently change as a person, and that's just not what's happening here.
I definitely see where you're going, Jordan, with that. Where you think that he will become that man that he's referring to in that panel. I think while it's a possibility, I kind of a little bit disagree. I think that we both agree it's a misunderstanding. He did not fully understand or complete Beerus's lessons. The whole letting go of the sin of the sands, realizing that it wasn't like some destined deterministic kind of force at play. But I think when he says like I couldn't revert back to that callous man that he once was, I think that that man that he was referring to, the DBZ, Sand Saga, Frieza Saga, all the way up to the Buu Saga Vegeta, that Vegeta that he was for so long that people most people recognize both in the West and the East. I don't think that was really Vegeta. I think that Vegeta represents a canvas that's already been painted. That Vegeta is an ensemble of Frieza, of the Saiyans, the old ways of the Saiyans, right? The King Vegeta, the Saiyan Patriarch, that classism, that elitism that he was born into and that he was groomed to be. Like, it was never really his choice. He was born into that, right? And then once Frieza and the Frieza Empire took over, he became that particular attitude as well. And he kind of had to live both of those extremes, which sometimes they complement, sometimes they don't. But that Vegeta, I don't think was really ever who Vegeta was, because it was never really his true self, right? Vegeta's quest throughout Dragon Ball Z and now into Dragon Ball Super, which is a constantly evolving progression. Vegeta has been on the path of figuring out who he is, and the Earthling martial arts, right? The Turtle School, Goku, the effect Kakarot has had on him, as well as all the opponents he has faced, has pushed him and ebbed him and, back and forth into some sense of direction. And now, currently, he trained with Whis, he trained with the Yardrats, and now he's training with Beerus, who I'm presuming is his final teacher. Vegeta, he hasn't realized who he is. He hasn't recreated himself from scratch like Beerus suggested. He thought that by reverting back to that self that we're talking about, that he could then start there, because that self represents a Vegeta that was detached from everything. He, didn't have connections. That Buddhist emptiness, sunyata, right, which some of Dragon Ball reflects, right, Buddhism and Taoism. I think that in the future, whether it's the next couple of chapters or later in the arc or later down this Dragon Ball Super series, if Vegeta is to perfect or master Ultra Ego, I think he's going to create a synthesis, a new Vegeta that's not entirely based around that old Vegeta.
Well, the thing about it is so you said earlier that he tried to become that old, or that he used becoming that old person to go into Ultra Ego before, but that's not what he did. He used becoming battle crazed to become that person that he was before. If reverting back to his old self is what he used to become Ultra Ego before, he wouldn't have said in that panel that he couldn't do it, because he couldn't do it. He never was successful at it. The only way he could even come close was to make himself become battle crazed. So he hasn't successfully reverted back to that person, at all.
Unless what he thinks is that by reverting into that person, he can tap into the perfected version of Ultra Ego,
and that's what it is. That's exactly what it is.
I'm making the assumption that this Ultra Ego that we're seeing is an Omen kind of version, which again, you can argue that it's not, and that it's just Ultra Ego. I just think that when he, like you said, if he had reverted back to that earlier self, then he should have completed the teaching. I just think that because Vegeta has gone through such changes in his character, especially in Dragon Ball Super, that he tried to and couldn't, because he's just he's so far away from that. He's gone through so much change.
Well, the thing about it is when he was fighting Granola the first time, he still was feeling that guilt. But if you go all the way back to, Namek, he didn't feel that guilt. So that's the reason that I do think that he will, because the thing about it is that God of Destruction thinks about nothing but destruction. That's what they do. And the only way Vegeta can do that is to have a similar personality to what he used to have. He's not going to do that by focusing on anything, that's not, there's a reason that Beerus's character is so similar to Vegeta's original character. It's because Beerus is thinking about nothing but destruction, and it does make him kind of callous and cold. So it's just And the thing about it is, it's like I said before, it's not necessarily a character regression because he's only going to be that way when he's in the transformation. But
It's temporary.
I do think that the end game for him is to tap back into that mindset. But I think it's going to be a complete version of that where he doesn't have any doubts. Like, so for example, let me give you a good example of what I think that means for Vegeta. Okay, so I posted a panel today on Twitter basically pointing out that at the end of Buu Saga that Vegeta was willing to kill not only Fat Buu, even though he helped take out Kid Buu, but he was also willing to take out Hercule because Hercule was taking up for Buu, and he thought that both of them were a danger to, the Earth and to the universe because they were allowing Buu to stay alive, and that pissed him off. And, he's like, when it comes to protecting the universe and protecting the people he loves, there is potential there for him to use that to tap into destruction. Like, I was kind of dismissive of that at first because I was like, there's no way because that's kind of a cheesy way to tap into destruction. But it is possible. It is possible that he can want to destroy someone so much because they're a danger to people that he can tap into destruction. I'm not going to say that's impossible. But I think more so what it is it's just like, in order for him to, the thing about it is like, if he was to use protecting people as an exploit for destruction, that is dangerous for the people that he is protecting. And it's kind of contradictory to the idea that it's just contradictory to what a destroyer does and what they stand for. And like, it's just, to me, it just seems like, if he's worried about protecting something, that's contradictory to the idea of being able to think about nothing but destruction. So I don't think that that's necessarily going to be the case. I think that the only way Beerus can tap into this power is to become similar to Beerus and to just become supremely confident and have absolutely no doubts in himself and his past or anything that's happened to him. And that's the only way he can tap into the full power of a destroyer, because I think he did tap into the power of a destroyer. I just don't think he tapped into all the power he possibly could because his soul was being weighed down by doubt. So it's kind of like how you were talking about it being an Ultra Instinct Omen type transformation. I don't think it's necessarily that the transformation is going to be different. I just don't think he can actually continue to tap into all the power that form offers him until he has absolutely no sin or no doubt weighing down who he is.
I agree. We'll see how that takes place later on throughout the other chapters. But like, if Vegeta does end up mastering Ultra Ego, and with what's happening, spoilers if you haven't read the chapter, I don't know why you'd be at this point of the video if you haven't seen it. With Bardock being the key, and I think Bardock really is the key in helping Vegeta erase the guilt, because Bardock being the person to try to save him speaks for the, like, if there is someone like Bardock who is trying to save people amongst the race, then that must inherently mean that not all of the Saiyans had to have been bad people. Because there could have easily have been other Saiyans just like Bardock throughout, the millions upon millions of Saiyans that resided on planet Vegeta.
Yeah, in fact, like, we know that there were other Saiyans who weren't bad like that, because in the Broly movie we saw multiple Saiyans who weren't like that. So it's like, we know that. But speaking of Bardock,
they were just a race manipulated by Frieza and Cooler.
Yeah, so speaking
Sorry, not
of Bardock,
Cooler, King Cold, my fault.
Speaking of Bardock, we see here, Minato recognizing Goku as Bardock. So let's get into how Goku is going to react to Bardock. Now, I've seen a lot of people say that he's not going to care about Bardock, and I genuinely disagree, because the thing about it is it's not necessarily that he's going to care about Bardock as a person. It's just the idea that a Saiyan existed that saved someone. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think it's necessarily that he's going to care about the idea of his father or the idea of, like, Bardock as a person. I think he's really just going to care about the idea that there was a Saiyan who existed who saved people, because that destroys Goku's preconceived notions of what the Saiyans were, too. Because up until this point, every Saiyan that Goku has met has been one that he didn't really respect other than Vegeta. And that took time. So, like, when he first met Raditz, the reason that he didn't respect Raditz and he didn't accept him as his brother is because Raditz was very blatant about the fact that he was an asshole. And, Bardock is the first. It's almost like the approach to Goku learning about Bardock is like the exact opposite of Raditz's approach on purpose.
We don't even know if Goku's going to realize, know that the Saiyan who saved Granola and, like, in the first place was his father. Like, he even be able to put two and two together, because I don't even think Vegeta knows. Maybe he's seen Bardock before, but we don't even know if Vegeta knows his name by like that.
Yeah. Well, whether he realizes that it's his father or not, just the very idea that Manito, is the very idea that Manito is going to introduce into his mind that there was a Saiyan who looked like him who was willing to save Saiyans, or who was willing to save Granola and his mom. That's just that in itself is going to have an effect on Goku, whether or not he knows that it's his father, or all that stuff. In my opinion, is just kind of like irrelevant. It would add weight to it, but I think more than anything, what's going to affect Goku is just the fact that there was a Saiyan who existed, who was capable of those kind of actions. Because whenever he met Broly, he like that also like reawakened a sense of like appreciation for the Saiyans, because Broly wasn't inherently evil. So we've already seen firsthand how Goku learning about Saiyans who weren't like that has an effect on him like that.
Yeah, I want to add to that. Like you said earlier, Goku, a lot of people think, and this is something that I've noticed, a lot of people think Goku's character in this chapter and in some parts of the arc has gone through character regression. I disagree. I think this was also progression for Goku's character. I think that, like you said, Goku, for the most part, hasn't really cared about his Saiyan heritage. Like you said, Radix, represents the old ways of the Saiyans. He represents um, the barbarianism and the savagery that kind of doesn't sit well with Goku's nature. Um, and Vegeta, like you said, was one of the only Saiyans that Goku respected initially, and it was mainly due to the fact that Goku wanted to use him to get stronger, and two, he respected his pride, and that's why like Goku, buried him on planet Namek against his fight against Frieza, and carried on his whim to want to defeat Frieza for the sake of the universe and the Namekians and all those that he had killed. Also, to push himself forward. Um, I also think, like you said, uh, recently in Dragon Ball Super, Broly was one of the other Saiyans, other than the Universe 6 Saiyans, which also piqued Goku's curiosity. Broly is a pure Saiyan, a kind-hearted Saiyan, just like Goku. And that's why, at the end of the film, Goku says, "Call me Kakarot," meaning that he respects the Saiyan culture enough that he will call himself Kakarot, his Saiyan given name. And so people that think Bardock's not going to have any effect on Goku, in this arc, in this continuity, I disagree, because Bardock's already been written to be a Saiyan that is willing to change his nature to to be a kind-hearted and compassionate being, and him saving Granola, who Goku already has an interest in, is going to have a positive effect on Goku's admiration and curiosity for Bardock's character. Um,
Also, I want to add to that and say that if you remember, whenever Bardock actually like sent Goku off, and Gine was questioning why he wanted to do it, he actually said that he didn't know at first why he wanted to do with it. He just felt like after destroying so many places that he wanted to save someone, and it sounds to me like that in itself was also an instinctual decision. And it's just something that Bardock felt that he needed to do. It wasn't necessarily like a conscious decision where he like weighed the options and he thought about it. It was just like an inner instinct or an inner drive to save something.
and I think this also relates back to, I think it was Jordan. You shared an interview from the Dragon Ball Super, one of the producers, Nagamine, I believe,
Yeah, the director.
where he talks about the downfall of the Saiyans, what made the Saiyans the way they are now, to where they're occupied by Frieza and they do all these heinous and barbaric things. I think it's the same interview that talks about Yamoshi and the Super Saiyan God, and the pure-hearted Saiyans. Bardock is kind of like an ember, a flame that represents that kind of character, that kind of Saiyan, the old ways of the Saiyans before they fell from grace.
Yeah. Well, they talk about in the interview about how Bardock is the only one left who shares the warlike principles that the Saiyans originally had, or the battle-like principles that the Saiyans originally had. And they make it seem like Bardock actually did like a lot of his jobs and stuff because he genuinely like just wanted to fight and just like had that original nature as a Saiyan, where he just like enjoyed battle. And that's really interesting because that kind of reflects on Goku as well. If Bardock like just genuinely enjoyed battle and that's the reason he enjoyed doing that job, that does separate him a lot from the other Saiyans, because they may have enjoyed battle, but I don't think they enjoyed it in the same context. I think it was also kind of a job for them, whereas Bardock like literally like got kicks from it. Similar to how Vegeta enjoys battle, but for him it's more about proving something. whereas Goku, like, he genuinely enjoys it. But so let's talk about. We're at the end of the chapter. Let's talk about what Monaito is saying here. So he says specifically that there was one Saiyan who didn't earn your vengeance. Now this is going to, because there's one specific Saiyan, and that one specific Saiyan has a connection to all three of these characters. What do you guys think specifically is going to be the effect of each person, Granola, Goku, and Vegeta, that the news of Bardock has on them? Like, what specific effect do you think it's going to have on them?
It could very well change Vegeta's perspective, like, on the entire Saiyans, which is gonna ultimately, like what we've been saying, like, take away a lot of the guilt that he's been having regarding the Saiyans
And the doubt.
and the doubt. Yeah. And in terms for Goku, it would just be like there's other cool Saiyans, there's other nice Saiyans out there. Neat.
Yeah.
Because Broly's a pure heart, like, well, not pure hearted, but he's a good hearted Saiyan, and he, like, the idea of there being other good Saiyans isn't really something that I think is too far away from the possibilities for Goku, right? Because he's seen a lot. Like, Vegeta's not that bad of a guy anymore. Like, Broly's not a bad guy either. So the idea of, like, Goku, like, hearing that there's another cool Saiyan race, I don't think it'll be one of the things that really surprises him, but it'll just be like, oh wow, there's another cool guy out there that's saving you. That's like, it's
Yeah, I
it'll
agree.
be one of
with
those
you.
types of moments.
Yeah. So what about you, JD? What do you think?
Well, I definitely think the hint is right there. I mean, if you look at the bottom panel where with Goku and Vegeta's expression, like, Vegeta looks very surprised and Goku just looks very curious.
Yeah.
We do know from the Dragon Ball Super movie that Vegeta was partnered with Raditz, and then, they obviously survived the planet Vegeta's destruction. And then in that same clip, Raditz references his younger brother Kakarot, and I think he also talks about, or Nappa talks about, Tarbal. So it's very possible and plausible that Raditz probably talked with Vegeta about his father Bardock.
Yeah.
So Vegeta, it's very possible Vegeta already knows who Bardock is, and so that's why he's surprised. And like you both said, Bardock is going to be the key, the link that allows Vegeta to overcome his guilt, probably fully realize and perfect Ultra Ego. Because if Vegeta learns that there's a Saiyan, from his era that, is kind-hearted, or at least is willing to do something compassionate and good, right? But ended up still dying anyways. It's going to tell Vegeta, I think, something along the lines of what you said, Jordan, that it wasn't the fate of the Saiyans to be destroyed, right?
Right.
And so that's going to help Vegeta go through great character progression, keyword progression, and then Goku is going to go through character progression because he's going to be curious about this Saiyan named Bardock, who kind of mirrors him, but more in the Saiyan ways. But it's going to have the same effect that Broly did on Goku. So he's going to cares about Broly right now. He wants him as a future training partner, and this is something that I didn't bring up in my review, but I talked about it on Twitter. Remember, Whis has that staff. Whis is like an omnipotent being, and Whis has like action replay across all of Dragon Ball world. So remember in Dragon Ball Battle of Gods, when Beerus was asking about the Super Saiyan God, Whis was like, all right, let me show you everything we know about the Saiyans. Here's a Saiyan named Kakarot or Son Goku, and here's the events of Namek and the defeat of Frieza, which shocked Beerus, right? And remember, Whis showed him that, like, video clip, basically. So Whis has that power. So what if, like, after this conclusion, after this phase of the arc, Goku, Vegeta, Granola, maybe something happens, they teleport off planet Cereal, they go to Whis' world, Beerus' planet, and Goku asks about Bardock, and Whis is like, okay, yeah, I know, you gave him the name, now I can show you. And Whis actually shows, like, the events of Bardock's life and up to his death, maybe. Like, Goku could actually see that.
So that's like part of your prediction for the next chapter. What else do you think may happen?
And then as for Granola, I think, and this is my interpretation, I've made mentions about this before in my reviews, I don't think Granola should lose. Like, right now as we speak, the fight is kind of drawn to a conclusion. It's reached critical mass, right? And so the flashback is the interim, which will which will lead to the climax of whether Granola, Vegeta, and Goku will eventually tag team and join up forces against Heaters and potentially Frieza. I think Granola shouldn't, whatever Monaito says, it'll have an effect on Granola, but I don't think it should completely make Granola change his heart, like have a change of heart. I think, I think Jordan, you mentioned this how they, Vegeta's going to somehow get the upper hand against Granola, because this is a very important fight for him. I think, Granola's going to do something. He's going to be like, my Naito, I don't care, because remember, um, Vegeta told Vegeta told Granola back in '74 that the saying that they were young, they were just kids at the time when his race was wiped out, and Granola literally said, "Well, that may be true, but you're all Saiyans, you're all the same, right?"
Yeah.
So Granola hearing about Bardock, while it may have an effect on him, it shouldn't completely turn his way of thinking. So I think Granola is going to try to do something, try to attack Goku or Granola or Goku and Vegeta, and then, like you said, Jordan, maybe Vegeta will have his answer. He'll realize his answer. He'll overcome his guilt, and then maybe that's when Granola will actually lose.
So what do you think is going to happen, Starblast?
What's going to happen next chapter? Maybe the next chapter is going to be more so focused on just explaining more of Granola's history, and they're going into some flashback details of the events that actually transpired, and they're going to calm down a little bit and talk about things, figure out what's going on, and then realize that the Hidas are up to something, and they'll have to. And maybe Granola would be willing to team up with them, but it could also be a thing where Granola decides he needs to take care of this on his own. There's a lot of possibilities for what can take place in the next chapter. But one of the things that I think this chapter has done, it's really opened up. It's really been an eye-opening chapter in really just bringing forth the deep rooted the deep rooted things when it comes to the themes of Dragon Ball that we've talked about. This is another one of those cases where you, like, on the surface level, the show looks one way, but when you really look at it from like a deeper level, actually I would say that the deeper level regarding these events are actually a lot more surface level and a lot easier to look at here than they've ever been before, which I really do like. And it's giving a lot more of the manga chapters like a lot more meaning and very fun to dissect. So this was honestly just like really fun. I'm really looking forward to the next chapter.
Yeah, the whole Fate theme is like really new to Dragon Ball. Like we really like focused on sci-fi and like like weird themes so much in the past that like this is kind of like a breath of fresh air in comparison to a lot of the arcs that we've had, because it's based on something that's very mystical for like modern Dragon Ball. But for my prediction now, here's the thing. So I believe that because of the effect that each character is going to have from learning on Bardock, this is how I see this going. So there's one thing I know for a fact that's going to happen. I don't know how it's going to happen, but there's one thing that I know for a fact is going to happen, and that is Monaito dying. Whether that happens in the next chapter or the chapter after that, he is going to die very soon. How that happens, I'm not sure. It could be Granola accidentally killing him. It could be, just like anybody, just some kind of like accidental kill, or it could be purposeful. We don't know exactly how it's going to happen, but I'm 100% convinced that he's going to die. But
And that's where you put in the plug to your video on why Monaito is going to die.
yeah, exactly. So outside of that, yeah, go check out that video. So outside of that, from what I've seen here in this chapter, if you notice, okay, multiple times Goku and Vegeta start to go at it and they start to fight. Now this is not something that happens very often. Like the conflict between Goku and Vegeta right here is higher than it's been in ages. And Goku is willing to let Vegeta try and do things his way because but as long as Vegeta can survive. Okay? And so here's what I think is going to happen. I think that once Granola learns about Bardock, he is going to experience the same kind of doubt that Vegeta has been dealing with this entire time, which is going to cause him to lose the edge in battle. And because Vegeta is going to be relieved of the stress and the blame that he's been dealing with in his own mind, that the Saiyans deserved everything that they got, he is going to get the upper hand in battle because he no longer has that weighing him down, and so he can tap into more power with Ultra Ego than he could before. But also because he doesn't have any doubt, that takes away any sense of mercy that Vegeta has. He'll lose all sense of mercy if he has no doubt in himself and no doubt in how he's handling a situation. So, with that being said, the effect that Bardock's going to have on Goku is reinforcing the idea that there are Saiyans out there who have protected people and kept people from being destroyed and helped people. So if you remember, I was talking about earlier about this tweet where Vegeta was going to kill Boo and Hercule, and then Goku spoke up and was like, nah, let's heal them. They tried to help us. They're good. Let's just give them a shot. And Vegeta just immediately agrees. And like Amish has pointed out that, that's part of the reason that Vegeta is not really his own man, because Goku is constantly saying, nah, let's just let this guy live, and then Vegeta's just going along with it. I think that is about to change. I think for the first time in Dragon Ball Super in a long time, we're going to see a disagreement between Vegeta and Goku. And I think because Vegeta has lost all of his guilt, Vegeta is going to straight up attempt to erase Granola from existence and kill him. And it's going to be up to Goku to stop him from completely destroying Granola and erasing him from existence. And his renewed sense of pride in a Saiyan, being a protector in the past, is going to reinforce this idea in Goku that he should protect Granola from Vegeta. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that that's a possible conclusion?
I don't think Vegeta would really have any reason to want to take down Granola, because maybe Granola wouldn't. There's a possibility that Granola wouldn't even have a reason to want to take him. I think the most that would happen is that maybe Granola would still be stubborn despite hearing the story that Manito would tell him, and would want to.
That's enough. That's enough for Vegeta wanting to take him out, though.
That could be enough, but at the same time, it could also just be the fact that Granola wouldn't even want. Wait, what do you mean that that's enough? What did Granola do from that flashback?
Because that means that Granola is still trying to reinforce the idea that it was the fate of the Saiyans to die, and if Vegeta has let go of that idea, then he doesn't have that going for him anymore, and Granola does. And if Vegeta has completely, conquered the idea that the Saiyans were meant to be destroyed, then he's going to have so much confidence, and Granola is going to be experiencing so much doubt that Vegeta has every reason to take him down, because it's a survival of the fittest thing. It's like, my mindset is superior. It's just like we've been talking this whole time. It's more so about proving who's correct, and if Vegeta believes 100% he's correct and he's not experiencing any doubt, then that means he believes in his mind that since he's the master of his own fate, he can take down Granola without any doubts.
Well, if Granola does end up being stubborn and still tries to take down Vegeta, then sure, I will completely understand that. It would be up to Goku to take him down. What are your thoughts on it, JD?
I'm very conflicted, because I really enjoy Granola's character this arc. I really think he's a well-developed character, some of Toyotaro's best writing. And so one of the things I've been kind of hammering is the idea that Granola isn't just a character, meant to represent a mirror reflection of Vegeta's past and, Saiyan, conflicts and whatnot. But he also represents the wish that was made. And we don't know much about the Cerulean Dragon. We only know what it did for Granola and what it might do for the Heaters. Granola also represents that force, that threat, which is the threat of Dragon Balls. And so that should remain the primary focus going forward, especially when we transition to the Heaters and possibly Frieza, right, as the parties increase. And so if I feel, in my opinion, if Granola were to lose, right, like Jordan's suggesting, if Granola has any stray thoughts where he wants to still enact revenge against Vegeta and Goku because they're Saiyans, even after hearing the story of Bardock and Manito's truth, if Granola still acts on that vengeance, and Vegeta or Goku do something to try and stop him, I think that, and let's say they defeat Granola, like Vegeta gets the upper hand, or Goku saves Granola, but they knock him out or something, it kind of ruins the wish, right? Because it means that Goku and Vegeta had overcome the wish. I think that they're going to overcome the wish later in the arc, because I think the Heaters are going to make a wish of a similar magnitude. But if Granola is to lose here, then it means that they've already overcome the wish.
I think it would make more sense that they overcome the wish right before the next wish is made.
I can see, that's why I'm conflicted, because I can see it going that way and still making sense. I just think that because at the end of the day, Granola is going to be sidelined. He's going to be taken out by the Heaters or Frieza or however this goes, depending on the wish or if OG73 is used. But the thing is that Granola had I don't want to say he had hacks, but he had a necessary ability that kind of worked perfectly to go against Goku's Ultra Instinct and Vegeta's Ultra Ego. The Heaters, to our knowledge, don't have any kind of ability like that, so they're not going to be getting crits on Goku and Vegeta. They're not going to be getting some sleight of hand. Like they don't even appear to be fighters except for Gas, right? And Alec's more of a knowledge fighter, which is very interesting. I'm very intrigued with Alec, because the wish could be a knowledge wish. It doesn't have to be a power wish. But the heaters, like I said, right now they're not that impressive, at least in terms of power, and so they need power, right? They need to, be packing some heat. And so if they use the wish and make some kind of, power wish, then, the way a lot of people are going to see it is like, oh, well, Goku and Vegeta just defeated Granola, who represented the wish. How are the heaters going to fare any better? See what I mean?
Yeah, but
To me, it ruins a little bit of the tension.
I mean, the thing about it is like, to me, the wish has already been defeated. Like, at this point, like, even though Granola hasn't been completely defeated, just the idea that he had to use his full power to even keep up with Goku and Vegeta to begin with kind of says that the wish has already lost its relevance, because he used his full power already.
The wish wasn't
but he keeps breaking his limits, though. Remember, Granola was overcoming his limits.
Yeah, but that's not due to the wish.
Yeah, that's his own like personal like abilities, his latent abilities.
That's due to the lesson that Goku and Vegeta are teaching him, is that he needs to better himself outside of the wish.
I don't think that they've even overcome the wish yet. Like, I still think it's very. Granola is still, like, according to the wish, the strongest in the universe. Probably not counting the gods of destruction. Like, probably not counting Beerus. Or actually, well, it doesn't matter if he's stronger than Beerus, because the destruction properties that Beerus has would make him be able to overcome Granola no matter
keep
what.
in mind that he made the wish as Goku and Vegeta were training. Like, the wish wouldn't factor in Goku and Vegeta right now, because he made the wish before Goku and Vegeta had completed their training. Not only did he make the wish before Goku and Vegeta completed their training, he also made it before Vegeta got Ultra Ego and before Goku, showed him Ultra Instinct, which are both static transformations that don't have a set power scaling. So, like, that really throws that throws the whole idea of the wish being superior to Goku and Vegeta in every way, like, out the window. Especially with this last fight, where we see, now that Goku has figured out that Granola relies on vital points to really have an advantage, that also basically just shows you that the wish was never all it was cracked up to be to begin with.
Yeah, I don't think that they're going to be fighting anymore in the next chapter. I think just like they're all clearly tired. They're all heavily worn out from this. If Granola is ever going to be stubborn again, it'll probably take place after they realize they got to deal with the heaters and stop them from making the wish with those Dragon Balls, and realize that this entire thing was a setup, because with Granola having this revelation, right? What Goku and Vegeta could have been saying the entire time, that they were set up, that they were brought here. They can literally, and with the involvement of Oatmeal, they can realize that this entire thing, Granola would end up realizing this entire thing was a sham, that he was set up, and that, like, at that very moment, the main priority wouldn't even be Goku and Vegeta. Like, no matter how he feels, it would have to be getting to the bottom of it and taking down the heaters, most likely.
Well, see, I think it's the opposite. I think that Monaito saying this Granola is going to cause doubt, but it's not going to completely cause him to fall to the wayside of Goku and Vegeta. But I think the heaters are what's going to cause that, because the thing about it is, it's way more likely that Granola still decides that he doesn't care within this first little bit, and then the revelation of the heaters being the cause of the Saiyans coming to the planet being the thing that actually pushes him over the edge, and realizing that the Saiyans aren't necessarily completely to blame, because that just makes more sense.
Either way, it's going to be a very interesting chapter, and I can't wait to see how the events progress.
Me either. Like, it's super interesting.
I wanted to ask both of you guys before we close, do you think this flashback that we're about to go into, do you think it's going to be a multi-chapter flashback? Do you think it's going to take up half a chapter, a full chapter? How long do you think, how much justice do you think Toyotaro needs to give for Bardock and whatever he's about to reveal leading into the next phase?
At most, guys, I'm thinking maybe 75% of the entire chapter. We don't, it depends on how much lore he's really trying to drop onto the actual story. We could end up seeing the entire story, the entire thing that takes place, and how important it is, as how it's going to impact, at how that built and impacted Granola's character from there going forward, but also the events that took place, talking about what happened to Granola's mom and everything like that. There's going to be a lot of very important information that the next chapter is going to hold.
Personally, I think it might be half the chapter, and the reason I say that is because they've already spent a lot of time building up to this revelation to begin with, so it's not necessarily like they have to cover it from scratch. They've done a really good job giving you little bits and pieces of the picture throughout all these chapters, so they've already kind of started to go over it in a way. So like the thing about it is like when you think about how much is necessary for them to tell you, it's not that much. There's really not that much that's necessary for them to tell you for it to serve the plot. Just basically explaining how Bardock saved them, why, etc. Like the amount of context that is necessary for this scene to apply to the plot just isn't that much. It's just not enough that it warrants multiple chapters or even the majority of a single chapter.
I hope you're right, because I'm afraid that it might be multi-chapters, only because like there's still the Gas stuff they have to go over, because Gas has some trauma that happened 40 years ago. There's Granola's mom, what happened to Granola's mom. There's the Namekians, right? Because there's multiple Namekians besides Wanaito that were on Planet Serial. And then also Frieza. Like, if Frieza's going to be involved in any capacity this arc, well, one way to introduce him in this arc is to have him flashback.
Yeah,
So-
that's a good point. I do think that like that is a quite a bit of content, but the thing about it is like they don't have to explain the stuff about the Nameks through the flashback, and they don't have to explain the stuff about Gas through the flashback either, because Gas is going to be a major component in the arc going forward. So it could be just like Granola, where we aren't learning, the ins and outs of his relationship and his past and everything that's going on with him until the latter end of their interaction with him. So it could be a thing where Gas gets involved, and then later on through their interaction with Gas, then we learn more about him. So I don't think it's really necessary for them to use the flashback to expand on everyone's backstory. As a matter of fact, it wouldn't be very good. It wouldn't be a very good writing format or like a good way of going about doing it, because it's like too much exposition and not enough action. And Dragon Ball just isn't about that. So
Watch Naito die, like as the healers are trying to make their wish, and it ends up being a reference to Guru dying on Namek before Vegeta was able to wish for immortality.
I wouldn't doubt it a bit. But then, like, how are they gonna, like the thing about it is like the healers have a very complicated plan that we have no idea what it is, which I'm very interested in. So it almost feels like the Dragon Balls are like necessary for whatever giant crazy plot they've contrived to be successful. But it would be.
There's still OG-73, and we remember they came through a ship, and then now they're like in a smaller ship as they're flying across Planet Serial. We don't know where 73's at. We know he was in like a tank, like one of those like rehabilitation tanks, where they like regenerate your destroyed tissue. So like right now, OG-73 could be fully like healed, but he's still in one of those capsule things. We don't know if that capsule thing is back at the heater base, or if it's on the ship going to Planet Serial. So that changes a lot of things if OG-73 is, say, with Alec and company. And we already know how dangerous OG-73's abilities are. Also, let's not forget the 10 questions that they asked Zuno. Most people, we know just from context, we know about 4 or 5 of them, but the other 5 we have no idea.
Exactly. So it's going to be a lot more complex and nuanced than people would like to imagine, which is why it's really hard to speculate, but it's still fun. Anyway, I'm going to end off there. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe if you want more content, and I will catch you guys in the next one. We'll see you later.
Bye bye.
See ya.